why medications cannot cure most brain mortality diseases, and why lifestyle and handwriting matter more. Number 1491, VPT Sharp 052, January 3, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Brain Health, Stroke, Dementia. Preface: My stroke on June 21, 2025, forced me to confront a reality that many people sense intuitively but rarely articulate clearly. Modern medicine is powerful, yet it has strict limits. Some diseases can be cured. Many of the most deadly ones cannot. My recovery has not been defined by a miracle drug. It has been defined by understanding those limits and working upstream, where prevention and adaptation are still possible. This article reflects that understanding. There are two different kinds of diseases. Over time, through both my self-study of medicine and personal experience from suffering 9 mortality incidents, I have come to understand why medications cannot truly cure most major mortality diseases. This understanding did not come from distrust of medicine. It came from viewing biomedicine as a system governed by mathematical principles, physical laws, system structure, energy flow, and long-term accumulation of damages. I now see diseases as falling into two fundamentally different categories. The first category includes infectious diseases, such as bacteria or virus-induced illnesses. These are caused by external intruders with DNA or RNA structures different from human cells. They live outside normal human cellular systems. Because they are foreign, chemical compounds can target them selectively. Antibiotics and antivirals work precisely because they attack something that does not belong to the human body. In these cases, drugs can genuinely cure disease. The second category includes most mortality diseases. These include cardiovascular disease, chronic kidney disease, stroke, dementia, and many cancers. These diseases do not come from outside intruders. They arise from human cells themselves under long-term metabolic, vascular, and inflammatory stress. The common fundamental causes are metabolic disorders such as obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and dyslipidemia. The same DNA, RNA, enzymes, blood vessels, and mitochondria that keep us alive are also the structures being slowly damaged by these metabolic disorders. This creates a fundamental biomedical limitation. We cannot design drugs that selectively destroy human cellular processes without also harming the human body itself. Medications can reduce symptoms, lower certain risk factors, or slow disease progression, but they cannot reverse decades of accumulated structural damage, especially at the cellular level. They cannot undo vascular stiffness, calcification, fibrosis, or long-term metabolic overload. This is why most mortality diseases are managed rather than cured. Brain mortality diseases and their true ranking. This framework becomes especially clear when examining brain-related mortality. From a brain mortality perspective, the correct ranking is stroke first, dementia second, and brain cancer third. Stroke is the leading cause of acute brain death and sudden neurological failure. It reflects long-term vascular damage, combined with short-term triggers such as blood pressure spikes. Medications can lower average blood pressure or reduce clot risk, but they do not fully prevent sudden pressure surges, or protect stiffened vessels from blockage or rupture. Dementia, especially Alzheimer's disease, is the leading cause of chronic brain-related death. It represents slow, progressive network failure, rather than a single catastrophic event. There is no medication that can prevent dementia. Existing drugs may temporarily ease some symptoms in some patients, but they do not stop disease onset, progression, or repair accumulated neural network damage. Brain cancers are often fatal for affected individuals, but they are relatively rare and contribute far fewer total deaths compared with stroke and dementia. There is no preventive medication for brain cancer. Treatment drugs are used after diagnosis and may extend survival, but they rarely cure aggressive tumors. This leads to a simple conclusion. There is no medication that can reliably prevent or cure stroke, dementia, or brain cancer. Drugs may condition risk under limited circumstances, but they cannot reverse long-term structural damage. Why lifestyle matters more than medication. Lifestyle acts upstream. It reduces continuous metabolic and vascular stress before damage accumulates beyond repair. Medications act downstream, after structure has already been compromised. Their role is supportive, not curative. After my stroke, this distinction became personal rather than theoretical. On September 11, 2025, during a visit to my stroke doctor's office, I reviewed nearly 100 of my brain CT images. I noticed many bright white spots along my cerebral vessels. These represented my cerebral vascular calcification, caused by my 36 years of type 2 diabetes. Most of this damage came from my earlier 20 years, from 1990 to 2009, when I relied almost exclusively on medications. That period accounted for about 91% of the underlying cause of my recent stroke. In contrast, the following 16 years, from 2010 to 2025, during which I relied primarily on lifestyle management without taking any medications, contributed only about 9% to my recent stroke risk. My acute hypertension of 175 millimeters of mercury around noon that day served only as the trigger for my hemorrhagic stroke in the Pontine region. I can take medication to lower my average blood pressure, but I must still avoid acute blood pressure spikes, because my cerebral vessels are already stiffened and calcified. I can take medication to support circulation, but I cannot erase decades of vascular damage compounded by aging. The only meaningful leverage left is lifestyle, interventions and maintenance of my brain function. This includes diet, exercise, sleep, hydration, emotional stress, regulation, and something that is often overlooked, how we use our brain every day. The Japanese handwriting story and its limits. Several years ago, I encountered a story circulating on social media about a Japanese physician working at a geriatric center in Kyoto. According to the story, this doctor followed elderly individuals over age 80, who showed little or no cognitive decline. He initially expected explanations related to genetics or diet. Instead, he reportedly observed one consistent habit. They all wrote by hand for at least 15 minutes every day. Not typing, not texting, physical pen on paper. I want to be very clear. I could not personally locate a peer-reviewed publication or official institutional record confirming the specific names, statistics, or duration described in this story. The details cannot be independently verified. I do not present this story as scientific proof. However, lack of formal documentation does not automatically make the underlying idea wrong. I approached this story from a neuroscience and preventive medicine perspective, to understand whether it made biomedical sense, why the handwriting idea still makes sense. The story immediately made sense to me. From both neuroscience and systems perspectives, handwriting is not just language output. It requires continuous motor planning, fine muscle control, and tactile, touching, feedback, visuospatial coordination. Seeing and understanding space and position, memory and coding, and sustained attention. Each stroke must be generated, monitored, and adjusted in real time. Handwriting stimulates approximately from 15 to 17 functional regions of the human brain. Typing, once learned, becomes largely automated. It relies on fewer integrated systems, and allows the brain to disengage more easily. Typing mainly depends on finger muscle memory and repetitive keystrokes. It typically stimulates only 2 to 5 brain regions. From a neuroplasticity viewpoint, this difference matters. Brain recovery and preservation of memory and cognition depend on active, multi-region engagement that resists automation. The brain preserves what it is repeatedly asked to do. After my stroke, I experienced memory loss caused by post-stroke multiple seizures. Within the first 90 days, often called the golden recovery window, my memory deficit improved from about 40% loss to about 2% loss. My method was based on 2 simple words: repetition and exercise, similar to training used by both athletes and musicians. Recovery was not about resting the brain. It was about challenging it gently but consistently, without overload. I increased my daily sleep from 6 hours to 9 hours, a 30% increase, while reducing my daily walking from 15,000 steps to about 7,500 steps, a 50% decrease. Handwriting fits this requirement perfectly. This realization led to a deliberate personal decision. Starting on January 1, 2026, I began keeping a daily handwritten diary. Instead of typing on electronic devices, about half of my writing is in English and the other half in Chinese. The exact proportions are not important. What matters is that 2 different language systems are exercised daily in parallel, through manual handwriting, engaging multiple motor and cognitive networks. I do not view this as nostalgia or rejection of medical technology. I typed professionally for nearly 30 years, beginning with palm devices around 1996. I built most of my career on digital systems. In fact, many mobile phone chips were designed using AI-based electronic design automation. ADA, software that I developed in Silicon Valley. I decided to adopt handwriting as my daily cognitive training. It costs nothing. It requires only pen and paper. It has no side effects. It can be sustained for life. Before making this decision, I remembered my elementary school years from ages 4 to 10. Every day, we practiced reading, writing, singing, listening, speaking, drawing, caring and communicating with others. These basic skills are directly related to brain development and growth. Handwriting in stroke recovery and dementia prevention. Handwriting does not reverse structural damage. Nothing can. My calcified vessels will not become young again. But handwriting strengthens remaining neural networks. It improves coordination and reinforces attention and memory pathways, especially when I write by hand about my past experiences and memories. It slows functional decline by keeping the brain engaged in complex, embodied tasks. From a biosystems viewpoint, handwriting supports the fluid regime of brain health. It promotes flow, connectivity, and adaptability before end stage structural limits are reached. This reflects integrated physical thinking involving fluid dynamics, solid mechanics, and geometric topology. In my post-stroke recovery, handwriting complements walking, blood pressure control, sleep discipline, and emotional stress regulation. None of these alone is sufficient. Together, they form a coherent upstream fluid type of strategy. These efforts reduce both recurrence risk and the probability of end-stage, solid type of system failures, such as stroke and dementia. Final reflection. My conclusion is straightforward. Medications are not useless, but they are structurally limited. For most brain mortality diseases, prevention and long-term control depend far more on lifestyle habits than on chemical intervention. Chemical compounds can alter output signals, but they cannot correct input behaviors or repair cellular level damage, which is largely irreversible. This includes not only managing metabolic and vascular risk, but also actively exercising the brain itself. Handwriting is a small habit, but small habits, repeated daily and combined with other lifestyle measures, are exactly how complex biological systems are preserved. This conclusion is not arrogance. It is the logical result of understanding how human biology works. I apologize to readers for unavoidable use of some mathematical, physical, engineering or medical terms. I hope the core message remains clear. At age 79, my remaining purpose is simple: to help other patients, one at a time, by sharing what I have learned from my own damaged and overworked body. I hope no one else has to endure what I have experienced. Over the past 45 unhealthy years, I am deeply grateful to the physicians, nurses, and therapists who saved my life. This article addresses biological limits, not professional failure. Disclaimer: I write this article not for fame, but to share what I have learned, so others can understand complex systems, prevent failure, and live better lives. This content is provided for educational reference only, and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this article freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights belong to the author. Gerald C.